I will do it again for the recording. I call to order at 1 o'clock, the Tuesday, April 26th meeting of the Narberth Infrastructure Committee. Myself and Vice Chair Winston are present live, and Member Robert Gravey is present by Zoom, correct? Yes, okay. We have a fairly extensive agenda, so I want to move through it relatively quickly. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from our February 22nd?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right, the minutes are approved. Excellent. The first item on our agenda is an information item for discussion about the street redesign. You may remember we spoke about this a few months ago. Manager Bryant has put together and submitted for us a very helpful memo summarizing where she thinks we should take this, and I wondered if you just wanted to quickly give us a quick summary and we can decide if we want to move forward this way.
Sure, thank you. And also thank you for doing, honestly, the bulk of the work on this. I really just kind of stole a lot of what you put together because I thought it was really well written. You know, as I mentioned, public health and safety is pretty much settled and sorted out. The safety component of it, again, thanks to some research that Michelle put together. And as far as the aesthetic goes, there were a couple outstanding questions this committee had from our last time we talked about all this. I think, you know, what was put together previously for this committee by, you know, by Council Vice President Panopoulos is, I think would work out, you know, great. You know, the questions I tried to address were the question of portability versus stability, and you know, I think as long as I mentioned here, as long as we just put some generic language that people just have to be able to move it within a certain time frame, I think we'll let people from there use their own creativity to determine what, you know, design is best that fits within that. In terms of snow and heating, again, I think given that we offered to the Greeks that they could have a covered structure in exchange for doing some snow clearing, to be fair and consistent, I think we would need to offer the same to other businesses. Let's see here. In regards to heating, again, I don't think we necessarily in the aesthetic guidelines really need to get too much into that. I think that you know, our building inspector and our borough engineer provide some good feedback on that. Ditto on construction standards and lighting. The only thing, aesthetic thing I would say on lighting is cords should be at least 12 feet above the sidewalk. And then if we did want to move forward on this with those minor kind of comments, which I think I would recommend in favor of us doing that, I would just say that people who have applied for permits now would not be subject to these aesthetic guidelines, but whenever they have to renew their permit 6 months from now, would need to then comply with them.
So just, I'm sorry I didn't read every word of it, just remind me, and I'm not going to be dogmatic about this, where we landed on the Jersey barriers. They just seem to be covered or something.
Yeah, I think we'll landed on
Public health and safety, I did the conclusion that we should do the water-filled Jersey barriers, and then we could just put a decorative cedar wood sort of. You know.
I know that I was not fully in favor of that, but believe it or not, I've actually done some traveling since then and noted that that's not an unusual situation for other municipalities. So
it's hard to find something better designed to stop vehicles in their trucks than a Jersey barrier.
Right, yeah.
No, and I saw the ones.
Weighted, they're heavy.
Right, exactly. And you pull the plug on them, you drain the water.
You can drain them, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I also saw others where they tried to do it with like other things that I didn't really consider safe. So yeah, that's fine.
And I did just want to make one last aside here that, you know, going back to the heating and fires, you know, this is also a little bugaboo, for lack of a better term, between myself and the fire marshal that the borough may want to at some point consider updating its open burning regulations.
So we would like to add that to our committee.
Thank you, that sounds great.
But there's none of these, well, these propane tanks, so you're not talking about those. You're talking about someone who actually had like a.
Right, yeah, actual open flame.
Yeah, like a fire pit kind of situation.
Exactly.
I don't know, like I'm sure someone's doing it, but like the vast majority of restaurants use this like same model, like thing with the propane that goes underneath.
Right.
You know?
Right, which are fine. Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, as
so,
long as they don't take the propane inside their store or, you know, like put the
Right.
heater under a, you know, like next to a structure that could catch fire. But
so we will move forward with, you suggested using the guidelines developed in the February 20th memo. I think if you would like, I would be happy to take a machete to those and get out the stuff that was sort of superfluous, like intended to get discussion going, that aren't really recommendations, and then pass them on. Or do you to refine more? Is that
Yeah,
good?
you can
Okay.
do that, and then if the committee's fine with you doing that, and if the committee's fine with me then refining it into something to then present to Borough Council for review, then I think that'll keep this moving.
Now, just one more question I have, because this is a concrete application. I'll just call out a specific installation that exists downtown now, which I guess is outside that Great American Pub. I'm not sure if it is theirs or not, but there's Jersey barriers, which would conform to the guidelines with covers, but there's also sort of PVC pipes holding up lights. Now, that doesn't, strictly speaking, conform to these guidelines, which sort of require a wood look thing, and I just want to know, I mean, are we comfortable with saying that they do need to look more like, I mean, what these guidelines contemplate, something that looks more like the Greeks. It's fabricated out of some kind of lumber. It has a relatively uniform look. That, I don't personally, honestly, I don't really have an axe to grind on this one way or another, but I just think we want to be clear on.
what does it say right now? Nothing?
No, I think right now it requires wood construction, like lumber construction, like the Greeks. It wouldn't permit like uncovered PVC
Right.
supports to be holding up a roof or lights. What do we think?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that shouldn't be happening. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, all right, so then we'll stick with the guidelines we have. I mean, you can always keep them and just put some kind of cover on it too, you know, with PVC, right? I mean, they can do what they want, but we want them to look more like the
They are
fashion floor.
actually, yeah, they're actually available on, you can see them there.
Yes, there
So
you
it's like the
go.
Greeks is the wood frame, and then
Right.
that is the PVC pipes that are there.
So I just want to make sure that what we're putting forward is something we're comfortable with ultimately applying.
I mean, I feel that my sense of what that is saying is everything about this, you want to look like that, but that's the uncovered Jersey barrier. So you want that capped on wood, and then you want the wood post there.
You want more posts. Okay, all right, then.
Right, or they can cap the PVC and something.
Right,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely, you can put a shroud
Yeah.
over it or something, that's fine.
Yeah, right.
Okay, great, that skips along most of the rest of the packet.
Right.
Okay, you're through that. All right, on to the next, so does anybody have any additional comments or
I would
questions
just
about?
like to echo what Manager Bryant said, and like, thank you, Michelle, because it's like, you put a lot of effort into
No,
that.
thanks everybody for.
And the rest of us read it, we're like, oh yeah, let's do that. That works.
Rob, are you comfortable with this?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I thank you, Michelle. Yeah, the public health is very pleased with it.
All right, great. Thank you so much, everybody, for all the work on that. Okay, next item, potential action items for Borough Council. The first item on the list is a borough truck and snow equipment request pursuant to Public Works Manager Jeff Eldon's memo. And Jeff, you were here, and maybe you could give us a recap where we are on this.
Yeah, so I think it came out, this year, the few instances that we had, that we had to go out and plow and clear snow and, take care of the sidewalks in the borough. We realized that, by adding, an additional piece of equipment or two, we could more effectively do it without putting so much, exhaustion on our crew. So we'd be able to keep them longer, but not work them, as hard, Working in snow is a different type of animal. It's cold, it's wet. It's just not enjoyable. So
It's time consuming.
yeah, and by adding equipment, especially the sidewalk broom, that we had asked for, that would effectively clear the walks down to concrete, which would greatly reduce the amount of, ice melt products that we would need to use, which ultimately leads to less contamination in the waterways. And then just using our skid steer more. We were able to get an attachment for our skid steer, which is in there, which is the cage plow. That has such a sharp angle to the plow that it scrapes, the blacktop asphalt extremely clean. And we could use that around the borough. We could go down our one-way streets, our cul-de-sac streets that are very difficult for our size plow trucks to handle without, you're in there doing 20 turns, especially at 2 a.m. when the trucks are beeping. We try not to get people up, but we could better serve the borough by adding 2 pieces of equipment into our mix.
Yeah, I mean, right, when this came up before, I think the only big question we really had was whether or not it'd be possible to consult with the EAC and see if they had any recommendations for non-gas powered equipment, just to make sure that we'd asked all the questions possible in that regard. And I don't know if the EAC's had any advice on that.
I have not heard, but the electric landscape equipment that we just got, they do make a blower for the snow that will run off of the same batteries. So I was real interested in getting one of them for the houseman, to be able to tackle, basically the sidewalks around our building. I wouldn't feel too comfortable to put that out in the town. I prefer a gas power that we can run, for hours on end without having to come back and recharge. But I think that unit just for around our building would be ample for them to take care of it.
Okay, so the sidewalk berm, I think, was maybe one of the things that we had, this is going back a few months, I was going back to February, so my recollection isn't totally clear, but we wondered if there was a sidewalk berm that was electric powered or battery or something that would be adequate. I think it was, do you remember this, Rob? You would probably remember it better than I was, because it was involved the EAC.
Yeah, I think that's what we were discussing, and Jeff, I don't remember if there is an alternative that you identified, but I can check back with Jesse Lytle to see if they have any recommendation. I would like to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very favorable to getting this equipment. I think we want you to have the equipment that allows you to do an efficient and good job of snow removal. But I would like to know if they have any advice on any of these things that directly pertain, and let's take their advice and weigh it and see if it makes sense in terms of function and finance. We don't need to buy it now. I don't think we're going to have another snow again until the end of the year. But let's take that one last piece of advice and then maybe make our purchasing decision and long before the next snowfall.
Yeah.
And I think that segues well, talking about the brining as well as the truck need.
Yeah, so, prior to getting to our in-house operation for the brining, when we replace our pickup or the next spreader that we purchase, we all remember that event we had here where the temperatures dropped drastically and our salt wasn't effective. So the next spreader that we priced out, you see those tanks that are mounted on the back of the spreader. That's a calcium tank, so that will spray the salt down as it's coming out. So now you have your salt that's coated in calcium, which will help break through that hard ice pack. And that does 2 things. The calcium works at a much more, from 20 degrees and under, and the salt is more dense, so it's not just bouncing off the ice pack and laying along the curb lines. So that kind of works in tandem with each other. So where it gets spread is where it stays, is where it works, is where it melts.
So we don't have brining tanks now.
We don't have the calcium tank.
We don't have calcium tanks.
Our in-house brine, we've been pricing out smaller ones for our shop.
Right.
We could currently now for us to pre-treat the roadways in the borough, we go through anywhere from like 10 to 14 tons of ice melt salt. If we have brine, we could pre-treat our roadways with around like 350 gallons of that solution, which would be made from approximately maybe 2,000 to 2,500 pounds of salt. So, the savings of that alone is drastic. We're pricing out a few different options, because we would need the sprayer for the truck, we would need the unit for the shop itself too.
So, but we have more than one truck, right? We have like
Yes.
3, right? That we do. So should we have a tank for each truck? In order to do
No,
this?
that I wouldn't say. You just need one for
Okay.
one truck.
So then looking at your memo on truck one's condition, that it's clearly reached past its useful life and needs replacement, this would be a ready opportunity to do that at the same time, right?
Yes.
Okay. Ira, you have a question?
So this is a question, not a demand. Is there a difference between the sort of environmental impact of these different like black salt and brine mixtures, or are they all sort of equally bad?
Yeah, I wouldn't put the brine as equally bad. I would say the brine is the situation when you're spraying brine is it stays where you put it. You're basically spraying off the jets, off the back of the truck, so you're spraying a line. So your chance of that washing away, is...
But that's about its efficacy, but not about like whether it finds its way into the, into the wastewater stream. Maybe it doesn't matter, I don't know.
Well, you use less.
Yeah.
So
I see you're using less, so it's about the quantity, it's not
Yeah.
about like the impact.
Yeah, like Jeff said, you're talking going from 10 to 14 tons per snow event to 1 to 2 tons per snow event.
Yeah.
So the amount is the big issue. There's not that much difference between one kind of salt and another, but using less is better.
Yeah. And the borough did express support for a program. Lower Merion Conservancy has applied for funding to do like a saltwater monitoring program around the area. And the borough did sign a letter of support for that. And if they get that funding and are able to do it, I'd be really interested to see what the results of it are compared to the different methods we're looking into.
Yeah, because, it's not just the environmental impact, like it cracks the roads, right? I know you don't want people to like skid and kill themselves and all that, but I'm just saying it does have an impact on your infrastructure, right?
Is there another option?
No, I'm
Using
not. I didn't
salt
suggest
products?
I didn't suggest another
But
option.
generally, the less salt's corrosive, salt is in the stream, so the less salt you're adding to infrastructure is the better.
I got the answer to my question.
Yeah, right.
All right. Is there any action that we should be taking on this today with respect to replacement of truck one?
So I think what, not to put words in your mouth, Jeff, but looking at the situation of truck one, I do, I would concur if Jeff agrees that we need to replace truck one before the winter, unfortunately. And I will admit this is an unbudgeted expense. In our capital plan, this was budgeted for next year because we were hoping to get through this year with truck one, which unfortunately we lost that one. So I would like a recommendation or some sort of permission from this committee to approach Borough Council with a mid-year budget request for the funding necessary to get truck one before the winter.
Yeah, and not to be too pushy, but given the current situation of vehicles being available, the quicker we can get it in answer, the better, so we can start to
Next council meeting.
the order and price.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. The longer we have to get a good price, the better. So yeah, no, I'm very comfortable with taking this to council and asking for that mid-year change. Rob, do you have any input?
I was going to ask if we could just run it like we planned. We'll run it by the EAC. Maybe we can do that sooner rather than later so it doesn't hold up the process.
Sure.
Do you want me to do that, Michelle, or?
If you're willing to run that by them at the same time you discuss the other snow removal equipment, like the broom, yeah, that would be fine. And, you know, it can't hurt to get more information, but in the meantime, I'd certainly authorize asking council to make that mid-year budget change. Do you think that this existing truck, as much as it doesn't meet our needs, will have any secondary value, like will have any sale value? No.
It'll go to, auction,
Yeah.
and, being, the size of the truck, it's, it would be a great site truck, for a company, a contractor to have. It's just, it'll bring a few grand, I would think, but nothing.
All right, well,
Yeah, it's just worth mentioning in the request that there's some discount, if you will.
okay. Any other comments on that item? All right, moving along to the library request for supplemental funding for ADA compliant entry. We have the change order supplied by the library for this item. Do you want to?
Sure.
Yes, anyway.
So, I've been holding quarterly meetings with the president of the library board and the library director, just kind of, checking on how things are doing over there, trade information, build relationships. And in our most recent meeting, I let them know about some of the planned things we borrowed money for 80 Windsor. And a request that came up when discussing that was the library has been looking into installing a electronic swing door in order to provide greater accessibility to the library for people. And given that the cost is, in the grand scheme of things, relatively nominal compared to over $1 million we have for these improvement projects, and given that it advances, the purpose of that money is to make borough facilities more accessible and do necessary repairs. I think this fits in with the scope of the borrowing, and would like permission to add this project to the project list that we have for the borrowed money.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Do we or do we not have a grant application in that includes some ADA accessibility features
We do.
for some of our borough buildings?
We do have two grant applications pending, one to the county and one to the state, to help offset or supplement those borrowed funds for accessibility improvements.
Okay.
So it could be something that ends up getting paid for by one of those grants as
Right.
well.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I agree. Do we need the committee to move this on to council?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that I just wanted to make sure that that if I added the project onto the list, that no one would, there wasn't something that I missed here, so I don't think this requires any council action.
Making the library ADA accessible is not something I would oppose never. I think that's a very, very worthwhile thing to do.
Yep.
Okay. Rob, anything? No? Okay, so next item of business is skate park update. Then we have a very comprehensive memo here. Everybody had a chance to look at it, submitted by both our borough manager and public works director. Who would one of you like to sort of briefly summarize this for the public? Anybody has not?
I'll make a stab at it then. Jeff, you're welcome to add on here. So the purpose of this memo was kind of, for the benefit of the public and this committee, to summarize what my takeaways were from the April 19th Parks and Rec meeting, as well as just to make sure everyone's on the same page with what the borough has been doing in regards to the skate park. So I'm not going to read this word for word necessarily, but this memo talks about the equipment that we're going to have, and there's an appendix with pictures and a list of the equipment. We are planning to meet this week with Jesse Clayton from Fifth Pocket to review the repair work that Public Works, I won't call it repair work, but the refurbishment work that Public Works has done on that equipment. And there's some comments from the Public Works manager about his take on the equipment as well. Public Works has been trying to make the court surface more appropriate for the skate park again, based upon the feedback that we've gotten from Jesse Clayton when this came up and talked about with him last year. And again, we're going to be meeting with Jesse tomorrow so he can see what Public Works has done to the court and see if there's any additional work that needs to be done. Not included on this memo, I've also reached out to the risk control officer for our workers' comp insurance, who also does liability insurance review. He is a certified playground safety inspector, and that certification includes things related to skate parks. And so I'm hoping, he's here tomorrow as well actually to do a staff-wide training, and I'm hoping to peel him away from that to look at the skate park as well tomorrow. There's been a lot of discussion about soundproofing. There's some information from our Public Works manager about soundproofing efforts to date. It was something that there was a lot of discussion about with Parks and Rec. I think also we may have found some video of like another skate park to monitor the sound with that. With the layout, there's not a layout plan provided here because that's one of the things we want to talk with Jesse tomorrow about. For fencing and locking, as the Public Works manager notes, the fencing is open right now in order for the work that they're doing, but would be secured once the skate park were to open. And our liability insurer has requested, that the skate park be locked when it's not being used. I made previous outreach to Chief Gallagher about that, and he did this earlier today. Sent an email to myself that was forwarded to the members of this committee, confirming that the police would be able to do that locking of the skate park at night, as well as to do any patrol activities required. I thought a great suggestion from Parks and Rec was that we have an ongoing survey while the skate park is in operation, and myself or Michelle or Missy could certainly put that together and show it to Parks and Rec and the Infrastructure Committee. Going back to some of the safety concerns we talked about, having a participant cap as well as what to do about spectators. For operating hours, rules, and supervision, there was discussion that the pilot would be open 7 days a week, generally until there wasn't my interpretation of the discussion was there wasn't a firm decision made on whether the closing time would be 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. There were some certain circumstances the group discussed in regards to that. To help draft up some rules, there's another appendix in here that has some suggested rules based on the research that the borough has done in safe operations for the skate park. For an opening date, this is me putting something out there. This is not something that I've ever gotten direction from council or the Parks and Rec committee. But to me, it just seemed most logical to try and have this open by Memorial Day. As long as we're sure that all the safety things and maintenance and everything we need to do is ready for that. Parks and Rec had questions about the budgeting for the skate park. My intention when working on the budget for 2022, which I'm not sure if I communicated to Parks and Rec prior to this or to council, was that any monies required from the skate park would come out of that money. I did suggest to Parks and Rec, though, at the meeting on the 19th, that if they felt that the skate park costs were going to eat away from the money they need, to otherwise provide our park services, then, I would certainly be willing to talk to council about any budget adjustment necessary, or if council wants to go ahead and do a budget allotment solely for the skate park. Maintenance is something, that our Public Works Department has offered to do weekly inspection and maintenance of the equipment. And then what follows is the, like I said, the appendices with the equipment that we have and the proposed rules and regulations for the skate park.
Okay. Does anybody, Ira or Rob, do you have any input for? Yeah.
So I have really only one question.
Okay.
Because, you know, it's obviously become a fairly contentious issue, this whole thing. So that's fine. It is what it is. But one of the things that I was a little bit unclear about where we were going, because I know there's multiple schools of thought on this, is to what extent it would be, there would be someone there at all times. Like, what was that, skate, what do they call it?
Skate the Foundry?
Skate the Foundry. And there was some, you know, rumblings that, you know, hey, like if the safety and all that is a concern, maybe we could have it, at least during the pilot, you know, have somebody there. And I don't know, like, how that would look financially. I don't really know anything about it at all.
So, following this memo, there was outreach made to the borough solicitor to try and kind of get a handle on how that would work, if it was a direction you wanted to go in. His general advice was that's not something you see happen anywhere. His general thought was the way these models work is that generally it's unattended. I mean, just like, you know, the basketball court's unattended or anything else in the park is unattended. And then you bring in organizations like this to host specific events that they would then, you know, supervise, but that would be under their insurance and their liability, and it would be almost a separate kind of thing.
But they would only be there part of the, during their event. They wouldn't be there like from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. Well, I mean, I get why someone wouldn't necessarily want to be the operator of a skate park. Because, I mean, they have to staff it, and, you know, they have liability. So I just heard it being discussed, so I'm glad you did the research to say that that's just sort of not how, you know, how these things.
Skate guard.
Skate
guard, they were, that was the phrase was used. Skate the Foundry is an organization.
So with all due respect, sorry, just to make sure other people don't think that this is like open kind of comment session here, we will have...
I redact that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
So, yeah, it would, I mean, the borough would be free to hire people to monitor the baseball field, the playgrounds, the climbers, the basketball courts, the skate park, our parking lots. We can hire people to monitor anything we want if we feel like that's ultimately a good cost benefit. When you do, generally speaking, recreational facilities, as you'll notice from your own life experience, they're open to the public with posted rules, and that the assumption is that people abide the rules. People monitor their own children. People don't put their 2-year-olds at the top of the, you know, spiderweb climber in Ashburn Park because they obviously can't do it. But there's nobody from the township there to stop that from happening. That's the way sort of everything operates in this space as a rule. We could decide to assume more responsibility, but we would really need to be very sure that it was done right, because we would then have decided voluntarily to assume a responsibility for people, say, abiding the rules that we post. Right now, our responsibility is to make sure that we've provided, you know, safe equipment and we've maintained it properly, just like the playgrounds. So,
I mean, I bring it up naively because, like, I mean, like, just like without really understanding it, it just seems to me like if there was someone like watching it, in theory, that it might be safer, but that isn't necessarily true.
It might be, I don't know.
Yeah, I said might, yes. So.
Generally, they're not operated that way. Like if you go to Radnor Skate Park, it's on an old repurposed tennis court that's been, you know,
It's the Havertown one.
No, Radnor's was also an old skate park.
Okay, sorry.
Apparently, according to, well, what I was just told today.
Anyway.
You know, they've got metal equipment, it's open to the public, it's unfenced, and there's rules posted, here's their rules, and it's, you know, skate or on risk. So that's the way it's generally done. That's the way our insurance, I believe our insurance broker understands that we would be doing it. If we would like to put somebody to monitor it, I suspect they would want more information from us. And if it was a third party, they would probably require them to indemnify us, I would think. So that's another thing, and I think if we want to do that, we need to give it some serious thought and figure out who's going to work all those details out.
Yeah. Again, I'm not pushing this. I just thought, given all the like back and forth about this, that if it was somehow easy to do that, which of course it never is, that maybe that would be a path to, you know, to like sort of making peace between the two camps. But If it's not feasible, then it's not feasible.
I mean,
I don't think it's feasible.
Yeah, that's fine. That's why I asked. I don't claim to be an expert on skate parks.
it could be, like, without a doubt, if somebody who wanted to do that, had a plan for how to get it done and came and said, look, this is how it could work and it requires this much, like say, for example, the Parks and Recreation Board could have said, look, council, this is how it could be done and this is the budget. We'd like to ask you to do that and we'd have something to consider. But it's not the way things are typically done. So
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily
I'm done.
suggest that we pursue it, but.
Cool. I'm good.
Okay. So that's monitoring. Rob, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I thank the manager and our public works director. The memo is so helpful, I think, in just laying out the different categories, soundproofing, the hours of operation. These are the ways that we can control. And I know sound has been one of the big concerns. We're not going to get to what we've seen in some other parks because it's not the newer equipment. But I can see, this is where we can kind of adjust dials a little bit in response to some of the concerns. So it's just a very helpful memo to me. It's also, as we all know, a pilot, and I really like that idea of collecting data.
Great. So I think if we are going to attempt to have a approximately Memorial Day opening, grand opening for this facility, for this amenity, council's going to need to approve rules, operating procedures, and those kind of things. So we're going to need to, I think we need to do some work on that. So we've got, the first item was layout, I think. Please, when I miss something, please jump in and tell me, because there's a lot to do. So the layout of the park, Jesse Clayton from Fifth Pocket Skate Parks is going to come tomorrow morning, I believe, and he's going to answer questions that the Public Works Director may have, that you may have. I know I was reading a manual, this public skate park provision, it was Massachusetts Insurance Association or something, so some of it was Massachusetts law, but they had like a lot of general guidance, and one of them was like, when it comes to producing a successful safe layout, the best thing you should do is ask the skate park community, the people, ask the users. So I think it's helpful to have that and also to run it by Jesse to make sure that the layout is. We have a lot of real estate on that court. Spacing the equipment out is probably not a problem. And you've been sort of looking at this provisionally, Jeff. Do you feel like that there's enough room to keep 6 feet between the pieces, 12 feet?
Yeah, I mean, this park, so all of the equipment that we got, came from T's Golf Center. Our tennis court is only about 12,000 square feet smaller than theirs. From where we got the equipment from the golf center. And then with the equipment that we're not using, we'll have ample room to keep spacing.
All right, great. One thing with respect to layout that was talked about at Parks and Recreation that I thought made a lot of sense also was whether or not there was a way to sort of lay out the equipment so that, and I realize that you've already selected the equipment. You've already kept the biggest pieces out, right? Like you've already selected pieces with the idea in mind. This is for younger users. This is for, beginning skateboarders. We don't have anything big and challenging in there. But even within that, there may be a way to set up a part of the park so that it's more likely to sort of keep younger or less experienced skateboarders there. That's something that was suggested at Parks and Recreation. I'm wondering if you would be able to maybe ask Jesse about that tomorrow and see if he has advice on that.
Yeah, so I was considering that, and then considering also keeping an open area of the court, for kids just to learn how to push and move and feel comfortable going from point A to point B. So it's not as if we're trying to design this to be fence-to-fence panel, equipment. We need room for people to walk through. There's 2 gates, so we'll need to keep access around the park, and then we'll also need to keep open space so moms and dads can push their kids and do their thing.
Is the plan to keep both gates open or just have all ingress and egress through one gate?
I would think we would need to keep each gate open.
I think for fire safety, I think the general, again, I'm not the expert on this, and we can certainly ask an expert on this, so thanks for raising that question. But generally, I don't know if Eric in your work as zoning officer, if you have anything to add on this, is that we generally want to keep 2 points of egress from anything for fire safety.
You probably want people to be able to get out both. My take is you want people to be able to get out of both those gates. Maybe the coming and going, you're focusing on like one location. Yeah. Maybe
Going, wait,
if you're coming, like, so when people are coming in and out of the skate park, perhaps one of the gates is like the gate where everyone's using.
Okay.
But maybe don't lock that second gate. Maybe that's kind of where you're getting to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I think this is a good question for Jesse Clayton and also maybe for the liability insurer. Okay. So I'm looking at area and status, and you are still working on the court surface. I've seen, I guess it's looking, the patches are looking very smooth and good. Do you want to speak at all to the patching and sort of like I guess, what the need to inspect and maintain those areas? Like what do you anticipate, if anything, being a challenge with respect to that?
So what we're anticipating is, this being, a trial run. We know that our concrete patches that we're doing, will ultimately heave and split as, the temperatures drop, once we get into, the end of fall. So with this being a pilot, we didn't see that as being an issue. We're just ultimately trying to achieve a smooth surface that no wheels will get stuck in. So what we did was, just cleared out each crack. Each crack had just been filled with various, soil, silt, debris. So our new sweeper that we have, we were able to just run that, kick everything out, let that dry up, and then just been patching it since.
Should something like that come loose, something like this, like the asphalt skating surface, what's our plan of management? Like how would you manage that?
If a piece cracks or splits, it's not a big deal to go out there, and come off, 2-foot section, and repatch it. We're going to inspect this the same way we inspect the hay bales, when we set up our temporary lanes for bikes, the same way we check all the nuts and bolts, at the swings in the parks, so it's going to be checked on. And, if we feel the need that there's enough need to fix it, and, then, ultimately have to, close the park for, half a day to take care of what we have to ensure safety.
Okay. All right, sounds like you plan. I'm not sure if there's anything that this committee feels like, well, I should make sure that committee members feel like you've had enough input into like each issue as we go along, so that at the end of this discussion, I'd like to say we can move forward a set of recommendations to council or bracket off certain areas that are still, in need of further study or decision. So, yes,
I
of
guess
course.
what I'd sort of like to see happen today, if it's possible, is for us to not force it to wait till our next meeting for us to approve it, but like sort of tee it up enough so that council can make a decision at their next meeting, just because of the timing. And so, like just us approving it, like in principle, subject to the, to getting all these details worked out would be like a great thing to do, because I don't want to see it like artificially delayed because of a meeting schedule.
Yeah, I agree, but part of this is sort of figuring out what are those details left by asking like questions, because that way we can sort of identify if there are details, I think this memo, it basically gets into everything, but I want to give it a little time for discussion as well, and then we'll talk about ultimately where we're going.
No, I know, I just was giving you my...
I agree. I see it that way. With respect to soundproofing, that's been I remember asking about that back in December, and I didn't know as much about it, and I've gotten a lot more informed from various sources, and including from you, that it sounds as though you have or have been thinking about a plan to encase anything that was open with plywood. That the issue with metal equipment isn't so much that it's not really all that loud. If you go to Ryder Skate Park and you stand there, what you really hear are wheels. You don't really hear like resonating metal. The real problem is when you go into closed equipment, really big openings, and then then it's like, the guy at the Parks and Rec meeting on Tuesday was like, yeah, if you have a big ramp and it's open in the back, it's like a tuba, it's like it's resonating in there. So can you speak a little bit to the enclosure of the equipment?
Yeah, so any, piece that we have that has an open side, is going to be enclosed with with plywood of at least 1 inch. I've read other topics, and I've spoken to the company that used to manufacture this equipment. Anything from foam blocks to spray foaming in there, but ultimately they said anything you can do to cover up openings will drastically keep the sound in. It's still going to make noise, it's still a park, but it's not going to, resonate out of the back of the ramp.
Okay. That's my understanding as well, and I think obviously this is a pilot, so if there are noise issues, I think we'll revisit it and address them and see if there's further action that needs to be taken. But I really appreciate all the work you put into this, researching and also just physical labor. I know it's a lot. I do know that one of the Tuesday night's Parks and Recreation Board meeting, one of the members of the board is a skateboarder himself, and he said he really doesn't anticipate there being a lot of noise concerns, and I certainly hope not. That's one of the big benefits of being able to lock the skateboard also at the hour of our choosing, is we don't have to let, we can choose the hours when you hear those noise of wheels going up, going up and down. So I'm comfortable not taking further action on soundproofing, saying you've got this under control, we'll monitor it and see if there's a problem, we'll revisit it. Everybody else good with that? Okay. Rules. So there are some draft rules that were in the packet. They largely crib off of Radner's with some additions. There's also this Massachusetts insurance company that's basically the same thing. I would love to go through these rules. I think there may be some that require further input. Is that all right if we do that? So hours of operation. That is going to be the first rule, and at some point somebody's going to need to make a decision, and I feel like it's reasonable for this committee to at least make a recommendation to council or get the discussion started. Well, I should say the discussion already started, because when Parks and Recreation did speak about it at their meeting, there's a general sense that something like, what was it, 9 a.m. to dusk, or 9 a.m. to 7 or 8 p.m. or dusk, depending on, because dusk is at different times. Different times of the year, it falls at a different hour. It is frequently easier to sort of decide when you're locking things up and kicking people out if you have an hour instead of sort of like dusk. And they say, it's not dusk yet, so I'm like we had the same discussion with the park hours. I'm kind of a proponent of picking a time and sticking with it. I like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. I feel like it's a whole lot of skateboarding hours that nobody had last year. So I'm like, it's a pilot. So
yeah, well, it's a pilot. So if you don't like it, you could change it.
Right.
Sounds good to me.
Rob, you want to?
Yeah, I guess short. I guess I feel shorter hours. I don't know how many. How many kids are going to be there on a school day at 9 a.m. And we have to open. We have to unlock it, right? So there's maintenance. There's possibly some supervision. So you may want to roll it out more slowly, like it's open on the weekends. And then we'll extend it to weekday hours. It could be a staggered opening. I'm just not sure how many users we really have in the weekday.
Well, remember, the pilot period includes the summer.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Well, okay, so I would just favor shorter hours to start. I'd rather start with fewer hours and then expand rather than have lots of hours and then restrict. I think we're gonna need to make some adjustments, and so we can't anticipate what all those will be. And I would favor shorter hours. So maybe that's
What would you
something
say?
like, maybe that's 10 to 5 or something, or 9 to 4 or something like this. I think, the concerns we're hearing about noise kick in when people are returning from work.
Well, pre-COVID anyway.
Right.
Well, I mean, perhaps the most important thing is to determine, as we're moving forward and we have to change these things, like what the process is for changing them on the fly. Because then, you can set whatever rules you want in advance, but as long as you have a mechanism for, adjusting those rules, as you get the experience. I wouldn't want to have to wait for like 2 months to change the rule. Any thoughts on that?
I think the process would need to be is, there's going to be some time in it, not 2 months, but I think it's going to be that whatever rule changes, whether it comes from me or Jeff or Chief Gallagher or a member of the community or whoever, I think that it would need to be considered by this committee, a recommendation made, and then at the next council meeting, council would have to vote yes or no on it.
Yeah, but that could be 6 weeks. That's the only reason why I said that. So.
Yeah, and that's true, but I unfortunately think like that, I can't think of any other way to do it that would be consistent and fair.
Well, I guess then we'd have to get into like on a specific point. We could say on the hours, it would be up to the borough, like constrain the thing that you're changing the rule about. But
Delegate some degree of discretion for
Certain
predetermined issues to the office. Is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. Sorry, thank you for rewording.
I think that's what you're saying. Yeah, I think that for operational details, we're not going to have a meeting of council decide that you need to close the park because you think that there's something that needs repair and you don't want users in there. You're just going to close the park, right? You're not going to wait 6 weeks. Like, you're delegated that authority.
Yeah.
Like that's a non-starter, right? Obviously, all that kind of stuff. Changing the hours, I'm fine with there being a delay. It's not like an emergency situation. Let's punt the issue of of the hours that the park should be open to council. I'm comfortable doing that. Rob, you can sort of explain your point of view, and let's just. Is that all right? We just have that as a discussion and workshop and see what people come out.
That's great.
Okay. Okay. Duration was an issue, but I think that's not. I think right now we're going to open it. When we open it, ideally, we're shooting for Memorial Day type opening, and it's going to stay open as long as it's not creating problems until
winter.
And then, there will be further discussions. Operations and maintenance. I'm just looking through a bullet list of things that were on, that came from somewhere. I feel like you've already kind of addressed maintenance. You're talking about a weekly inspection, right? What items?
The transition pieces, where the bottom of the ramp meets, the court surface, where ramp pieces are attached to each other to make sure there's no, just about every fastener is installed from underneath of it. There's only 2 pieces that have fasteners on the outside. They are countersunk down. So our weekly inspections are just go do that, just checking that. And then as far as maintenance, it's speaking with Radnor Township, and as long as their park's been open, the only maintenance they've had to do is paint.
Right.
She said they've painted their ramps twice since their park has been open.
Do you know how long that's been? Approximately? No.
Tammy Cohen is who.
No, do you know how long it's been open? Like approximately, I don't even know. I bet David Bordeaux's on this, I bet he knows.
But are they metal or concrete?
Yeah, no, they're the same as ours.
The same as ours?
It's the same equipment as ours.
Yeah, because they actually considered purchasing the equipment that we got for free from T's when T's first shut their park down.
Oh, really?
So she was very aware of the equipment that we had, what shape it was in, and spoke very well of the equipment, and just kind of reiterates that the ongoing maintenance isn't anything more than just keeping pieces set, and obviously heat plays a factor, with the weight of the ranch on the court, if it heats up, we'll have to just keep an eye on that, as.
Materials move.
Mhm.
Are the pieces, are any of the pieces going to be anchored down, or do they all just stay down by virtue of
No,
their
once they're together, they're heavy, they're not, like, our whole crew can't pick up one, that's how.
The grinding, what about like the grinding boxes, is that what they're called? Do they get anchored down, or are they heavy?
I mean, they can, they have enough weight to them where they really shouldn't move much. If we go on and, we feel as if they should be anchored down, a couple of weeks into the trial, it's not
Right,
a huge deal.
Is that a reasonable question to ask Jesse if nobody's asked him?
Yeah.
All right, let's ask Jesse just to see if he has advice, but that seems good to me. I mean, if they've painted them twice, I think that's been in operation for a while. I don't think you're going to need to repaint this year.
No.
That's okay. So so won't really have, you'll have inspection issues. Does it make sense to sort of do regular sweeping? I've heard reports that some skate parks just also put brooms out there for users to sweep debris to the sides.
I'm sure folks would, every park that I've been to, I've seen them there, I've seen people use them. I wouldn't want to commit our department, to sweeping, every single day or every other day. If it floods and the courts get covered in debris, that's definitely on us, to go in there and clean that up.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel as if the sweeping daily, that the folks who are going to use this park, will gladly take care of it.
Yeah, so we can make some brooms out there for them?
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, I suspect they'll just use them and then it'll be great, so, okay.
Michelle, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave at 2. I have a work meeting.
Yes. Okay, is there anything that on the rest of this agenda that you felt like that you wanted to weigh in on before you have to go? So we make sure we get, even if it's out of order, so we make sure we get your comments?
I'll jump back in if I can find something.
Yeah.
I think I'm okay. I mean, I don't know if we'll get to the,
Once he leaves, we won't be able to make any more of the decisions.
No, there's 2 of us.
No, there's 2.
All right, so that's fine. Okay. Yeah, okay, so if there's anything that you wanted to like jump in on that, or you think of, let me know.
okay. Yeah. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, all right. So, as far as opening the park, I'm just looking at my calendar now because I'm not very date challenged. When is Memorial Day? It's the 30th.
It's a Monday usually.
Yeah, the Monday, okay. Does this committee want to try to make a recommendation, which may or may not come to pass? So, anything can happen to upend it, but at least a target date for the opening of this park.
So,
Monday the 30th is Memorial Day.
So I would make a motion that we approve in principle the opening of this park, subject to, working out these details and having the council approve it, on Monday, May 30th. That's the date.
Do I have a second?
Well,
There's a
actually,
motion.
okay.
No second.
I can second it for discussion.
Okay. So now we have some discussion.
So my concern with doing it actually on 30th is since that is a borough holiday, if there's any opening day hiccups or anything, like myself and Public Works wouldn't be working that day.
How about so the Saturday's no good. So if you would want to do the Friday before or the Tuesday after?
I think my preference would probably be the Friday before thematically. I don't know, it feels better to me.
Okay.
It feels like you're gonna have a lot more fanfare.
So I amend my my motion.
So, provided, obviously, provisionally, because, things could still get in the way, we would be looking at a May 27th grand opening.
Right. And that's just our recommendation to council, right?
Right, of course, this is our council has to ultimately approve it. Does anybody have any feelings about who or how things such as promoting the park so that people know that it's opening. Not safety signing rules and regulations, which somehow we skipped over that. We'll get back to that. Sorry, I don't know what happened. We got sidelined. I got sidelined. We will get back to that. Not the rules and regulations signage, not that kind, but other signage, other sort of ways to promote the use of the skate park, the safe use of the skate park enthusiastically. Who should do that? Like who would you like to see pick that up?
Bertel will do it.
Bertel, can't volunteer people in the audience, that's not fair, especially when they're muted. You know, I've had some, unofficially, the chair of our Finance and Administration Committee was listening to this and thinking, oh, you know, that you know, because she never misses an opportunity to think of ways to connect things that are going on in the borough with our business association or with larger sort of efforts to bring the downtown businesses in. I guess I would like to find out if we want to ask council to authorize some kind of unofficial, you know, group to manage that with the office, obviously to work together with you in terms of like signage. I know that there was one of the youngsters, one of the young users had created a logo. Has anyone seen the pink state yard logo? It's very precious, and you know, it's the kind of thing that we could decide to use, you know, if we wanted to. If we wanted to do that, because it sort of organically came up from the community like a couple of years ago when he was trying to talk the borough into considering doing something like this. Would we like to delegate this to a small working group that we can, how can we, Samantha, how do you think we could bring something like this about? Do we need council to specifically authorize that? Can I, as chair, outreach to Parks and Rec, Finance Administration, and see who's interested in coming together to work on those not like big policy issues, but more just like, you know, the little things that make things happen. I don't know, you put balloons on the fence on the opening day, those kind of things. There's those kind of little things.
Yeah, I'll admit, in my head, I've been so focused on actually, you know, getting the skate park open. That's a subject I really haven't given much thought to.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't really expect you to be out there hanging balloons. Can we?
Yeah, I think part of what I'm struggling with is
to do that.
I guess the way my brain works about knowing what we want to do, it's difficult for me to say how we would do it. So maybe that's the role of that group, is to determine what we're doing, and then I would see the role, and depending on what they want to do. I mean, the office would need help from outside parties, like you said, if we're talking about doing just hypothetically balloons or something like that. I know that was just a hypothetical example. Yeah, I don't think it's something the office could do solo. Like obviously borough resources we could do, put something up, you know, in the information boards, you know, put some kind of signage out, you know, in the park, you know, put something on our website, social media, the email news. Those are all things, especially if we were provided materials or suggestions for materials we could do.
Can we ask council at the workshop when this comes up for discussion, whether, you know, one second, to sort of deputize a small group, or to see if the office can solicit volunteers, or this committee, you know, like procedurally, how would you want to manage something that happened that way?
Yeah.
Did you want to make public comment before you leave?
Our meetings, I'm going to leave it in this discussion.
I mean, there's a motion on the table, so.
Oh my God, there's also a motion.
So maybe we could just.
All right, so you have a motion to open. We have a motion to open Friday the 27th.
Yeah. Subject to approval from council.
Okay. We can vote on the motion. I guess I can second it, and
Yeah.
Chair's allowed to second. I guess I am second.
Well, Rob already seconded.
He did. Well,
Okay,
now
so-
the amended motion. Okay.
Yes, he did actually.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that's our target date, is the 27th.
But maybe we should allow some public comment given the time.
Yeah, it is getting late, and I don't want people who came to give public comment to be shut off. We do need to come back to going through these rules, because I think there's some that probably aren't appropriate for us, and we should take a look at them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to throw it open I think, to public comment. There's nobody in the room. Was President Bush? Was not going to make public comment. I did receive one written comment. It's from Tom Grady, but he's also here on Zoom. So I will start with Tom Grady. Tom, would you prefer me to summarize your written comment? You asked us to put this into the record at infrastructure, or did you want to give...
Michelle, you can just put it in the record. That's fine. You don't have to read the whole thing, as long as it's part of your documents for review.
Sure, absolutely. We'll put it with the, I guess, with the minutes. We could do, I don't know.
I'll transfer the council stuff.
Yeah, so Tom Grady just provided, maybe I should briefly sum it, as a 32 resident of Narberth, expresses concern that that it doesn't find a recommendation from Parks and Recreation Committee, is concerned about Chief Gallagher and the Narberth Police Department's awareness and ability to open and close the park, some concerns about liability and the qualifications of Jesse Clayton of Fifth Pocket to give us advice on the equipment. Just concerns about ensuring that maintenance is appropriately conducted so that we provide a safe pilot. I hope I did justice to that. So that will be part of the record as well. Okay. In addition, I don't think this counts as public comment, but I did receive an email from Chief Gallagher addressing this. Again, with a number of comments, but basically expressing the idea that the Narberth Police Department is able to open and close the park as needed, and stands prepared to respond to any issues that would arise with it, in the same way that they would with respect to any other recreational facilities like our basketball courts or football fields, etc. Mentions that he hopes the pilot will be successful and that he stands prepared to help. Okay, are there any other members of the public who are in the waiting room who have a comment?
All right, the first hand I see up is Carol Marie.
Hello, everybody. First of all, don't discount snow. There's snow on the forecast. I'm in upstate Pennsylvania. You're due to get 3 inches of snow tonight. So don't discount snow. Secondly, I think the best ones to advertise the skate park would be tapping those number of kids that came to the council meeting last week. That way it'll give them ownership of it. So tap them and see what they come up with. I think that would be a good way to get community involvement and kids ownership. My public comment, though, my question is, what is the timeline for taking down 201 Sabine? And have the tenants been notified? And what specifically are the plans for the playground side?
For the what? Plans for the what? I didn't.
Playground side.
Playground side. Okay.
Playground.
There is no timeline for taking down 201 Sabine Avenue that I'm aware of. Is there?
No,
We've made a decision that we can't keep the buildings up, but we don't, and we have Penalties provided us with an estimate of the costs to do the environmental remediation and the decommission, remove the buildings, and restore the site. But we got no imminent plans because the tenants haven't been notified, and we have tenants who are using the buildings. And Carol Marie, there's no plan for the park side other than to keep it park. I'm not aware of any of those park at all.
I'm sorry, say that again. My battery just, I have to plug in a battery. Say that again.
Plans to make changes to Sabine Park.
Will that remain a park, or will there be development on that side?
I will not vote to put development on Sabine Park. I can tell you that much.
So a park corner to corner is on the table?
Well, that's been on the table from the beginning, and as far as I'm concerned, the part of Sabine Park that has the playground equipment and is currently used by kids, I'm not gonna, and it's like right on Sabine Avenue, like right across from people's houses, I'm not personally voting to put a building there. That's where I stand, but I can't tell you what anybody else on council will vote for. But my personal opinion is that you don't put that corner is not an appropriate place to put a building. I'm happy to share my view of that.
All right. And that is being proposed to council not to do any development on the park?
I don't have any, there's no proposal to do development on the park.
Okay, that is good news. The community will be happy.
We have talked about possibly looking at the area behind the park in the back of the parking lot, right? But that's the only thing that's been talked about. And even that, at this point, there's not like a plan, right? Because you could see that. You've seen that on hopefully, if not, go take a look at the sort of 5 plans that council talked about last December. I mean, that's what was contemplated, was to think about whether that space could be used back there.
Which also brings another point. Council has said that you will have community meetings for the property for the park before there's any decisions made. And so far there have been none since 2019. When are you going to be scheduling community engagement meetings?
I mean, we also haven't really done anything since 2019 that would, because since we've been sort of in a holding pattern with COVID, but, I can't answer that question right now. That would be a question that all council and council president would need to sort of decide at what point have we reached, a point where like it makes sense to sort of have a community meeting. But right now, I mean, I know you go to all the council meetings, so we're not moving any particular plans or projects forward other than. Well,
but with the RFPs and with the site studies and everything that's going on, it just seems that it's time to get the community's questions to see what the community wants, so you know what direction to go in or to plan in.
Well, I mean, I think if an RFP went out, which would be non-binding anyway, I think it would make sense to certainly get community feedback on anything that may or may not come back in response to that. But we're pretty far from that even happening. So
are we saying we've got a 5-year timeline before there's anything's going to be happening to the park or to the site?
I hope not, but I can't even answer that. Carol Marie, you probably remember, because I think you were at this meeting, you might not have been, but this goes back to like 4 years ago when this came up at a meeting, like back when it was the property committee or something. And I think I said something like, I think we could just do this in a year. And it was funny because I was like clearly naive. Things take a long time in government.
Well, and that's what we're worried about. We're worried about this happening within a year without the community talking about this and telling you what the community wants. We don't want to have this say, oh, you know what, shovels in the ground next year. Okay, we're ready to go without.
That's not going to happen. All right, any other public comment?
Looks like we have Mr. David Bordeaux.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to thank everybody for their hard work on this pilot skate program. Council in particular, but also the parks and the public works group for putting work into this equipment and getting it together. My only thought was on the hours. Is to give consideration to a lot of the programs for schools are starting to wrap up, sports activities. So keep some of that in mind with the hours, kids getting out of school and looking for a place to go and skateboard if they're not involved with other organized sports.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bordeaux. I see George Moosburner. Also, Mr. Moosburner, do you have any public comment?
No, I don't.
Okay. And Jennifer Marinigo?
I have no public comment at this time, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Is there anybody else out there that I don't see? Manager Bryant? Okay. All right, let's go back to our agenda and try to get through the remainder of this.
So just a point of information, I have to leave in 10 minutes.
Okay, well then, we need to go through these rules because we need to know if we're going to recommend these to council. We've got potential hours, we're going to ask council for their input. Use of the skate park is at your own risk, skate within your own abilities. I think that's, anybody have any comments? Skateboarding is only allowed in authorized areas, not permitted outside the park. The skate park is not supervised. It is strongly recommended that park users wear protective equipment such as helmets, knee pads, elbow pads, and wrist guards. Again, most of this is cribbed right from Radnor's skate park that's been in operation for some time. I added this: participants may not skateboard with earbuds or headphones because that just seemed unsafe to me. Only skateboards, inline skates, BMX bicycles, and scooters are allowed in the Narberth skate park. Motorized vehicles and equipment are strictly prohibited. That is from Radnor's rules. I myself don't know that BMX bicycles belong in this park, but I wanted to give the opportunity for some input into that. Or do we want inline skates and scooters?
I think I'm not a voting member of this committee, but from the public comment I heard at the Parks and Rec meeting last week, it does seem like there were people who were interested in inline skates. Mm-hmm. So I think we should probably leave that. I would probably err on the side of saying probably no BMX and no scooters, but I don't do those activities, so.
I mean, start simple.
Let's start simple, right, along road. So I'm in agreement with maybe keeping them out pilot since we're managing something as it is. Okay. Only active participants are permitted in the Narberth skate park. Spectators must observe from outside the fenced area. There was discussion of this at Parks and Rec. I feel like that was the direction that the board seemed to want to take.
Everybody seemed to like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I think there were skateboarders there who made the case that that's the safest way to do it. Do not proceed down the ramp until it's clear of other skaters. That's obvious. Items such as benches, tables, and fences aren't permitted. Basically, you can only bring small personal items that can fit within a bag, other than your equipment. So you're not bringing large things in. No food or beverages permitted in the skate park. Everybody agree with that? Smoking and alcohol strictly prohibited. Woo! Yeah, you know what I mean. No pets or animals are permitted. All skating structures to be utilized in a manner consistent with their intended usage. You may not bring your own ramps or equipment. No makeshift items or modifications to the ramps and half pipes. Waxing of the surfaces is prohibited. Allowed amplified music constitutes a disturbance of the peace is not permitted. Damage, defacement, or other maintenance issues at the skate park may result in immediate closure without advance notice. Those are the rules that were sort of cribbed from other sources. Any additions, subtractions, or comments? All right, then we can send those on to council as modified here at the meeting for their approval or their further modification. Fair enough?
Sounds good.
Okay, we had opening, Christmas cap. All right, so let us move on to the other agenda items, if that will be okay. I would like to talk about the Parks and Rec master plan before you leave, Ira.
Okay, go for it.
Because that's something that we really should. I have placed in this, if you can just give it a few minutes. In our packet are the long-term park recommendations that were provided by Parks and Recreation Council a few years back. And they came together with some other work that would be done with KCBA, and there's some renderings that were approved. There's a whole bunch of things, but this was part of what was provided. And I think Parks and Rec had an insight here that we really failed to absorb. At the time that these came out, the idea of decommissioning and removing the buildings at Sabine Avenue and like adding a couple acres of park space was sort of something that only a couple people were talking about. Me and a couple other people seem to think that, over the years that has, after facilities were evaluated, the expense of it, all of these discussions that have happened, right? We've kind of moved to the point where last winter, council voted that we will not be doing the maintenance of those buildings. We will be decommissioning them. We will be moving on. We will be greatly expanding park space. What Parks and Rec had said in this memo is many of the following suggestions, particularly for Sabine Park, involve the demolition and/or construction of buildings at considerable expense to the borough. Significant professional planning, fundraising, and community input would need to happen before any large projects are undertaken. Should the Borough Council agree with our vision for the further development of Sabine Park, and by development they don't mean buildings, they mean development of more park, the Narberth Recreation Board suggests that the Property Committee, which is now Infrastructure, appoint a small working group to look at the long-term plan for the parks and create an action plan including communication strategy, community feedback, budgeting, engagement of professional planners, grant writing, and fundraising. The committee should consider including a member of the Recreation Board, the Planning Commission, the Property Committee, no infrastructure, the Council Finance Committee, the Narberth Athletic Association, and the Shade Tree Commission. I thought that was good. I think that's a good recommendation, and I'd like to ask this committee if we are comfortable bringing that to council.
So, in general, we've been doing this more and more because these standing committees don't have the time in their schedules. They meet once a month, and like if you put a task like that on one of the regular committees, they can't get the routine business that they're doing done. Doesn't mean they shouldn't be part of that process.
Of course.
But I just think that we did it with parking, you know, we did it with, we're doing now with the police a little bit, environmental action. So I do think it's useful to have groups like this that can, you know, maybe not, they can even meet more than once a month, you know, during that time when they were trying to, you know, get something done. So I agree with the principle of, you know, like getting some people, and then you can also bring in people with, you know, other expertise as you've described. So I'm in support of that idea.
Okay.
So I think we should take it to council.
Okay, yeah, I mean, one member of Parks and Recreation at the, I don't know, it was a couple months back when they were entertaining a proposal or a presentation from a potential park planner who had suggested something like 9 meetings or something to do a master parks plan. Was like, what do you know, thought that was like, I'm not on board for that. Like I didn't sign up for that, and I kind of feel like, you know what, that's kind of what, you know, it is a very large project, and it is going to bring in things like budgeting and finance, and you know, it's going to bring all of, I mean, a larger project like that, which involves the new development of a couple of acres of park. It's a substantial time commitment, and it may be more reasonable to ask a representative of that board that wants to put that time in. That way, you free up the board to be able to do other things. So, if you want, we can take this to council and have council discuss this and the composition of any such working group.
So I move that we take that proposal forward to council. You'll have to second as well.
I will second that. And now is there any discussion on that motion?
I think we discussed it before, but it's okay.
I know, well, the borough manager may have some input too.
Thanks.
We're a little thin here in the room, but you know.
No, I'm certainly agreeable to that. And independently of this document, it was you know, something that had come to mind as well. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Okay, so.
All right. So, all in favor? All right, motion passes. We will do that.
But it's just taking it forward to council.
You know, we have 2 more items on the agenda. I just really skipped over one. I'll go back to it. I think the Parks and Rec duties update, that had to do with developing a charge for Parks and Rec, like has happened in the past, which they seem to feel was helpful. In fact, they even did it at Parks and Rec's request a few years back in the form of a resolution, so it was very, very clear. Let's punt that for our next meeting because I don't think we have content and we're getting very long. So, and it's not like super urgent. So let's move that along, and we will take that up next meeting. And now let's go back to our Public Works Director's request to add repaving and regrading behind 80 Windsor, which I accidentally skipped over. I'm sorry. You have a proposal in here, and you have a number. Would the Borough Manager or Public Works Director like to sort of discuss briefly?
Sure. I'll take the first crack at it here, Jeff. So again, one of my recent meetings with the library board president and head librarian, it came to my attention that behind 80 Windsor in the area shown in this picture, water tends to pond over there, which makes that area unusable for people, especially in the winter because it freezes over. So I had a chance to talk to our borough engineer and our public works manager about it. And again, going back to that theme of having accessible facilities, you know, the solution determined for this, which is the quote provided in this packet, would be to take up a lot of this impervious and basically regrade it so the water doesn't pool in that area. So ultimately this would be a reduction in the impervious surface in that area and would help make the library more accessible, as well as the facilities at the west and east wing of the community building. So again, I would recommend in favor of adding this project to our list that we have going. Tangential to this, the engineer and public works manager brought to my attention that in our pollution reduction plan also calls for the borough to install a bioretention facility in the vicinity of this project. So separate from the first project I just talked about, our public works manager has been talking with Shriner Tree Service about helping kind of prepare the ground for any project like that, and is working on some landscaping plans for 80 Windsor as a whole. And that I think will come before this group at a future meeting. So those are two things we're looking at. For today, I'm asking to add, making sure no one's opposed to adding this project that we have a quote for to our building improvement list that we're using the borrowed and potential grant funds for. And just want to make sure no one had any immediate objection.
Do you need to vote on that, or are you just on a verbal?
So I'm making sure no one's opposed, so I need more than asking for your approval.
It's all good.
No, this is clearly.
And I have to go.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Edward. Okay, so we no longer have a quorum. I will note that as far as ongoing current borough projects, we have a memorandum in the packet, correct?
That's correct.
As we always do every month. Borough manager, thank you. I have no comments on it, but it is in the packet for anyone wishing to see status update dates on borough projects. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned. I needed a